You've probably lost weight before and then gained it all back. I've been there myself, but I broke this cycle over 5 years ago now using the same principles I'm about to share with you in this video. These are the same strategies that have worked for me and all of my business leader clients over the years. Here is what we will cover. What to do with your food without restrictive dieting, the type of exercise you should do during the week that delivers the best results in the minimal amount of time, and then the third and most important thing, the psychology behind making sure that the weight you lose stays off and it becomes a completely new way of life where you can perform at your best as well. Now, before we get into all of that, you need to understand the science. You do not overeat to meet your body's need for food. The reason that people overeat is to meet their psychological needs. And usually meeting those needs comes in the form of escaping from stress. So think about it like this. If you're not managing your body's stress very well because you've got so much going on in business and in life, and you're also using bad habits alongside that to escape from stress in the very short term, your body's stressed out state will build, which means you'll have more and more negative emotions that goes with that stress state. The more negative emotions you feel, the more you're going to want to escape them in the very short term. Your brain is literally wired to do this as a survival mechanism, and overeating food, which is high in salt, sugar, all the bad stuff, is a great way to do this. It works in the short term, but long term it actually contributes to that negative stress cycle. The first thing that I recommend everyone does before they start another fitness program or another weight loss journey is to start measuring. Because just like in business, what gets measured gets managed. I personally recommend people start wearing something like a Whoop, because it is so pointless to listen to all of these gurus about these stress reducing habits and better ways of eating if you're not actually measuring data to see what works well for you. It's only really by using a device like Whoop that you can see your data and start to see trends of the habits that really work to improve your ability to manage stress. And when you start seeing those trends, you'll naturally start self-correcting. And the common thing I hear from people about this is, oh, I don't like looking at my data too much. The reality is that you'll spend 8 to 12 plus hours each day looking and analysing data for the business, and if you're not doing it for yourself and you're in an unhealthy position, it is just a bullshit belief. And the reality is it's going to keep you stuck because you'll try loads of different things and you won't really know what's working. Just like in business, you would not try something new without measuring the data. Now, let's get into you never going on another diet again. When it comes to weight loss, it really is as simple as just looking at the numbers. You want to look at how many calories that you're eating, how many steps you're doing each day, the kind of activity that you're doing in the gym, and then you want to weigh yourself 3 times each week. And then you can assess from there. If you're not losing weight, you probably just need to reduce the amount of calories you're eating each day, or increase how much you're walking. The important thing to know is that you never want to lose more than 1% of your total body mass each week. So as an example, if you weigh 100 kg, you should not be losing more than 1 kilogram on average per week. I personally look at people's weight over 2-week periods. If you're comparing your day-to-day weighing, it's going to be going up and down because of water weight. And really, you want to lose fat, not water or food weight. So by looking at how much weight you lose over 2 weeks, it gives you a far more accurate representation of how much fat you're actually losing. And the reality is, if you're not losing fat over a 2-week period, it's just because you need to reduce the amount of calories you're eating each day or increase how many steps you're doing on average each day. Now, when it comes to improving the food that you're eating, because I tell everybody, the less food you eat, the better quality it needs to be to make sure you're supporting your body and giving yourself enough energy to basically reduce the cravings, because if you're eating loads of bad food, your energy is going to spike real quick, go down really quick, and you're going to be hungry again, so you'll end up eating more. So with your nutrition, you just need to answer a couple of very simple questions and keep things flexible. The first question is, how can you make your food healthier? And for a lot of people, they don't understand what that is. So that means you have a knowledge gap that you need to go and fill. And it's an important one to fill, especially with something like food that is literally fueling your everyday life and every single thing that you do. The second thing is, with my food being healthier, how can it still be convenient for me? If your new healthy way of eating is ridiculously restrictive or ridiculously hard to keep up with, again, you're not going to sustain it long term, so you inevitably will give up. The third thing is, how can it still be enjoyable? So how can you still have a nice meal at the weekend and something that you enjoy during the week? Because again, if you're not enjoying it, you will give up. And if the thing that you do to lose weight isn't sustainable long term, you wouldn't have built any good habits up whilst you're losing weight. And when you finish losing weight, you are very likely to go back to what you were doing before. And as I see constantly, day in, day out, people just gain all that weight back. And then the fourth question is, how can you reduce the amount of processed foods that you're eating? Now, the idea with these questions isn't to answer these perfectly, because you never will. You can always improve something a little bit. But if you're constantly asking yourself these questions and trying to be better, all within the framework of still making it convenient and enjoyable for you, you're going to get to such a better answer than if you were to just take up a really restrictive diet that you're inevitably going to give up after a certain period of time anyway. So the next thing is not spending hours in the gym to lose weight. Most people that I see will believe that weight loss has to come from getting a personal trainer, doing exercise classes, and working really hard in the gym. And this is where they're misinformed by the science. The reality is that the majority of the calories you will burn in a day will be done through walking, and it's far easier to increase the amount of steps you're doing, which is going to stress you out far less than getting you in the gym to beast you to lose weight. I encourage everyone that I work with to see the gym and to see exercise as something that you go to do to enjoy, but then also to become healthier. And then with that in mind, rather than picking exercise routines to try to lose weight, you should pick an exercise routine that matches what science tells us is the best thing for adults to do. And the guidelines are simple. You need to do 2.5 hours of moderate activity like walking each week as a minimum, or you can swap that for an hour and 15 minutes of vigorous activity, which is something like running, playing a sport, something that's a little bit higher intensity where you can't really hold a conversation because you're a little bit out of breath. And then you need to do 2 resistance sessions every single week. That basically works every muscle group in your body. Now, this should be the absolute minimum as a non-negotiable that you're doing for exercise. Science is very clear that those guidelines, when people meet them, they live longer. If you don't meet them, you will not live as long. Now, my advice with those guidelines is that you want to make it as fun as possible. So the hour and 15 to 2.5 hours of activity. Ask yourself the question, how can you do that in a way that you'll find ridiculously fun? For me, I personally love boxing. So that's how I get that done. And then with the resistance sessions, you want to try to compete with yourself and maybe go with a friend or do it in an exercise class that you do find fun. But the reality is that you just might need to get those resistance sessions done, ticked off as a non-negotiable, and then have all of your fun playing a sport outside of it. But if you don't do those resistance sessions, you're not meeting the healthy guidelines, and you're far more likely to get injured whilst you're doing your sport for fun. So they have to be in there, whether it's something you really enjoy that much or not. And then the third and most important part of this entire process of losing weight and then keeping it off to achieve peak performance is your psychology. You really have to start this whole process by setting goals you have control over. Majority of the people I meet set goals that they have zero control over, like trying to look better for other people. What somebody thinks about the way you look will pretty much differ day to day. So despite the fact that the fitness industry is set up for everybody to go and train to look better, I really don't think it's a good goal to have because you have zero control over it. Instead, what I recommend people do is to go deeper. They really need to look at what they value most in life. For most people, it's usually connecting with their family, connecting with their friends, the mission that they're involved in with their business. They then need to attach their health goals to what they value most. And that comes with taking the time to really understand how getting your health to a far better place will positively influence what you value most. So would it be the energy to be completely present with your family? Would it be to have more focus at work so you can contribute to your mission more? Would it be in the sense that you actually would remove all of your worries about your long-term health so you can focus on fully experiencing life instead? It's only when people get complete clarity on this that they'll have strong enough reasons to build discipline over time. And then with that goal, you then want to look at things you can actually measure. So using a wearable like Whoop, you can look at what data is going to relate most to you achieving that goal. So it's things that are actually inside of your control, like improving your habits to see a positive impact on the data that you're measuring, whether that's weight loss, whether that's heart rate variability, resting heart rate. The second part of this is that you will always fall to the standard of who you think you are. If you constantly just accept and have a belief that you're someone who is just out of shape, that is exactly what you are going to get. It is far better to have a very clear vision in your head of the goals that you want to achieve and who the person is that achieves them. So if that's somebody who is 30 kg lighter, has a really easy and flexible healthy routine each week, eats well but still enjoys themselves, has tons of focus every day and is able to have the energy to smash it at work and then also come home and enjoy the time with their family, it's getting very, very clear on how they behave and how they think each day. What are the things that they tell themselves that you can actually start doing now? Because it's this crazy concept that you can't ever achieve a goal in the future. You can only start behaving like that person, and then the goals you achieve in the future will be a byproduct of those behaviors. Once you are really clear on those behaviors, you can then start using what science tells us to build long-term habits. And the best ways to create long-term habits around the behaviors you want to stick is, how do you make that habit enjoyable? Like, how do you make the 75 minutes of vigorous activity each week enjoyable by playing a sport you love? How can you make it easy to do? Like joining the gym really close to your office or buying the equipment for home. How can you make that habit obvious? Like putting it into your calendar or putting a note on your desk to make sure that you do the activity each day. And then how can you attach it to habits you already do? Like for example, if you know you need to start calorie counting to initially reduce your weight, can you calorie count after brushing your teeth, as an example? This is really the process of behaving your way to achieving your goals. The final way you want to reinforce this is to keep yourself socially accountable. The more you post on social media, the more everybody is going to remind you of the behaviors that you've committed to. So you'll actually stop acting out of alignment with those behaviors. If you found this video useful, send it to somebody you know that would really, really benefit. And the more people that like and subscribe it, the more people will see it and will be helped from it as well.